So this weekend was Easter, and I spent some time with my family, as I usually do for these types of holidays and for birthdays and all the events that you're supposed to spend time with family. And it was a good time. I had, enjoyable conversation, which was really cool, talking about some issues that I care about with my sister and brother-in-law and my younger brother. Spend time with my mom and some other family members, and see my nieces and nephews and all that good stuff. And it always does make me feel good inside and feel thankful to have that opportunity to connect to the family that I do have. Some of you will be familiar with some of the struggles I've had with family, specifically with my father and with some other family members. So it's nice to have, as now growing up as an adult, have some kind of relationship and connection with them when it always hasn't been that way. Um, yeah, and I'm thankful. I'm really thankful for that. I think it's important to make sure that that's clearly said. But as I usually do whenever I'm at these family gatherings, I find myself stopping and reflecting and kind of thinking about the differences, I guess. Noticing the differences, not focusing on them, but noticing the differences in the way we live our lives between, my brothers and sisters, and between the way they raise their kids. I don't have any kids, but there are some things that sometimes I see in like the kids, or even just in the quote unquote family traditions, that make me question and wonder, why do we do that? What is the purpose of that activity? In this case being Easter, right? So Easter, people are boiling eggs and decorating them with colors and paint and glitter and little things like that. And they're hiding plastic little eggs filled with candies, and there's like chocolate candied everywhere. There's cakes shaped like bunnies, and just all this kind of thing. Like, I guess I don't know if it's just an American tradition or just my family, but I think it seems to be fairly common globally for a lot of us, at least. Growing up in this way where, you get family together, you eat. That's kind of what you do. You eat a lot of food, and some families drink. You do things of that sort, of that nature, just a celebration, right? Of bringing family together. And that's a positive thing. But again, I notice these differences, and I notice that, for example, with the food, right? Like, I personally can't eat most of the food that's at these family gatherings, not only because I'm a vegan, but even if I wasn't vegan and if I was still just health conscious as I try to be and as I aim to be, the food that's available isn't really what I would eat in my own diet. So I don't know. I've just become more, I guess, glued to my principles and my values as I've gotten older. And so even going to family events, like sometimes I'll make an exception. I'm like, well, everybody's here, I guess I'll eat this, or there's nothing else to eat and I'm hungry. Or sometimes I'm, a little bit more prepared and I bring my own food. Like, say, Thanksgiving, I've learned to bring my own vegan foods there just to make sure I have something to eat, because the rest of the family isn't thinking in those terms, because most of them aren't vegan. But also, as I've noticed, and this is no attack on any of my family members in case any of them end up watching this or listening to this somehow, that most of the food isn't healthy. And that includes the food that the adults are eating as well as the foods that the kids are eating. And like I said, there's lots of sugar, there's lots of chocolate. And it's not like it's organic, sort of healthy chocolate, it's cacao. No, this is like whatever the heck is at Walmart or H-E-B or just the local grocery store right off the shelf. It's like it's very unhealthy. It's filled with sugar, it's filled with whatever other crap. Like, if there's veggies at all, it's probably regular, just quote unquote traditional veggies sprayed with Roundup, Monsanto pesticides. There's lots of meat, and again, it's not like it's organic, healthy meat free of hormones. These are just the traditional hot dogs and burgers and these kinds of things. Or like, let's order a bunch of pizzas for everybody. And this is the stuff that I mostly grew up around, my family eating. That's just what we did. We had gatherings and bought a bunch of food, and there wasn't any mindfulness or awareness of, well, where did this food come from, or how much waste are we going to produce during our family gathering? And there definitely is a lot of waste. I was mentioning Easter. I sit there and I again try not to be cynical or judgmental, but just relate it to where I come from and thinking about what I want to do and my traditions and the traditions and the cultures and the rituals that I want to create and that I am creating in my own life and in my own family's life. My family currently being me, my partner, and our rat and our cat, and the traditions that we are creating that are important to us, and seeing the contrast in what our families do and what we want to do. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. As we grow and we age, I think we each create our own pathways and decide how we want to raise our families. However, as many of my listeners and supporters know, that the average person isn't very challenging of their beliefs for the most part, especially as it pertains to government and authority and things of that. But when it comes to family, we often just repeat the things that we were shown. And diet, I think, is one of the most obvious areas. Like, unless you are the one person who's going to be questioning and challenging, like, oh, is this healthy for me? More than likely, you're going to feed your kids the things that you were fed when you were growing up. And unless, again, you decide, well, why is it that we paint these eggs? Or why do we have these plastic eggs are going out there? Or, I know that some people try to keep Easter particularly close to the quote-unquote original meaning, which was the resurrection of Jesus Christ, right? If you're a Christian. And even that seems lost on some people. I'm sure in some of your homes, you go to Easter Sunday and there's a ceremony and the talk of resurrection and why that's important and whatnot. But even then, even with that, I don't see many people questioning and challenging, well, why do we do this? How come I'm just repeating the beliefs that my family handed to me? Have you picked up a World Book of Religions or compared and contrasted various belief systems to try to understand and learn from other people's traditions and other cultures and decide if the culture you were handed and you were raised in makes sense? Or maybe there's another culture, maybe there's another tradition, another religion, another belief system, another way of life that makes more sense to you. In my perspective and my experience, I don't find many people challenging and questioning and thinking of these things. Instead, there is this over-reliance of what has been passed down and handed down through tradition, right? Passed from one culture to the next. And that's fine. That's, I'm not sitting here bad-mouthing anybody who chooses the things that their families handed them. But I do think that if we had more critical thinking individuals, we might have, more critical thinking individuals. We might have more people who are challenging those systems and those traditions and those rituals and asking what's best for them. Because I personally don't plan to raise, if I ever have kids, them at all in any way near what I see from my other family. And that's, again, not a judgment. It's just that they wouldn't be eating these same kinds of foods. They wouldn't be going to birthday parties and celebrations where all the kids are just eating crap and drinking sodas on sugar and all this kind of stuff. And then the parents wonder why they're running around acting all crazy. And, oh, my kid's got ADD. I need to put them on some pills or whatever. And not my family doesn't really rely on pills too much, that sort of thing. But my point here, and this title of this video is called Fitting In, and thinking about that fitting in. And so sometimes I don't really feel like I fit in with my family. I love them. I care about them. And even beyond that, though, it becomes clear after, say, a couple hours together that we don't have a whole lot in common. There's that bond of like, wow, we've known each other a long time. We come from the same blood and the same, family and parents and ancestral line. And that has value to it. I'm not trying to say that doesn't have value. Family is important to me to a certain extent. I've always felt that obviously we can't choose the families we have. And some people are dealt a very shitty hand and they have a lot of trauma from their families. So they don't think of family time as something positive and powerful and freeing. They think of it as a very stressful, just negative experience. And I can understand that. And I'm a big believer that you shouldn't stick with family or anybody, any relationship, simply because, you're related by blood or because it's expected. Like for me, it's like, there's this expectation that every Christmas and every Thanksgiving we'll go to grandma's house or to one of the family's members' house and everybody will come together. And I do it. I've done it my whole life, even into adulthood. But I do recognize that there's not a lot of substantial conversation. Again, because I live a very different life from a lot of these people who I call my family, we don't always have much to share and to say. I can connect with a couple members who respect what I'm about, or they're the kind of the weirdos in the family too, particularly my grandmother and maybe one of my cousins who's living, his own path. But there's also a lot of areas where we just don't have anything in common. They want to gather together for sports, watch sports games on the holidays and exchange presents and just kind of have vague conversations, casual conversations about, we're working, we're up to this and that. And maybe it's my fault. Maybe I need to take a look in the mirror and say, I'm not trying hard enough to get to know these people. And I have made an effort more and more to say, well, let me see where they're at. Let me not just be focused on getting them to hear about all the awesome things that I care about and that I'm up to. Let me see where they're at and see if I can find something to connect to. And I do make that effort. But overall, what my work has taught me, especially as I've done now 2 U.S. speaking tours and speaking in Mexico, Costa Rica, all over the U.S., increasingly, I meet so many different people, different backgrounds, different languages, different origins, ethnicities, ages, interests, etc., that find my work through one way or another, and we have deep conversations. And what I've come to realize is that there are so many of us out there who don't feel like we fit in. And I don't even mean that in the sense of just fitting in with your family. Obviously, that's a part of it, because if you grow up not feeling like you fit in with the people that are, you're surrounded by or you're supposed to be closest to, that can be a difficult feeling. And then if you go out into the world at large and you're the kind of person that questions things, questions the nature of reality, questions government, questions corporations, questions authority, maybe even dives into conspiracy theories, you really get that feeling of not fitting in and of not belonging to the larger society. And that can be, I think, traumatic. In my book, Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion, we talk about how the waking up process is actually a grieving process. It's a grieving process because you're grieving the fact that you recognize that the things that you were taught growing up by peers and by people of authority that you trusted, many of them, if not all of them, were lies or misrepresentations on the real world. And so you have to go through this grieving process of waking up and realizing that. And just like a grieving process of, a death, you go through various stages. Not everybody passes through the same stages, but some people go through, denial and then anger, and then you go through these different things and you get to acceptance, right? But some people, I've realized, get stuck in that anger phase. And I'm thinking of some of you out there who might be listening to this right now, who comment on my YouTube channel and elsewhere. You're angry. Yes, maybe you see the truth, you see what's going on, but you're still angry. And I think part of that is, not to say that anger is bad, and it inherently there's a need for righteous anger because it can fuel us in a positive way. But some of you get stuck in that angry phase and that apathetic phase, and everything's fucked, everything's screwed, there's nothing we can do. Just this defeatist mentality, or just shame everybody else, look down on other people. And I think that one of the reasons that happens is because you still haven't been able to fit in. You still haven't been able to find a way to have your tribe, your community, your family, your peer group that many of us are looking for. I know that for me personally, going through depression and drug addiction and all these different things, and then getting into activism and helping build a community here in Houston and connect with so many great people, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for that deep connection. Like, wow, we can talk about anything from spirituality to aliens to government cover-ups to, conspiracies to health to being in the garden and whatever, and we are a community. And even if we don't 100% agree, we thrive on that fact instead of focusing on that and thinking that that's a detriment to us, that we have differences of opinion. And so I think that what I've realized is the more I've done this work, the more people I've connected to, the more of you I've met in person, that we are all seeking to fit in some way. And there's a healthy way, I think, to try to fit in, because as I said, having community, having tribe, having a peer group that you can count on is a valuable thing. However, trying to fit in with the larger society, the world at large, which we do know as free, powerful individuals, feeds us messages and a culture that is very opposed to what most of us have concluded are valuable and healthy lessons. For example, when it comes to things like sex in the modern culture, pop culture, society, the dominant culture, you're shown either this really blatant like sexuality in your face, and that's supposed to be empowerment and things of that sort, or it's hidden away. Let's not talk about sex. Let's hide it from the kids. There's a lot of mixed messaging going on. And so when you look at the modern dominant culture, or if you're trying to, what people say, keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with the neighbors and what everybody else is up to, and making sure you've got the right clothes and the right house and the right car and your lawn's manicured and all this kind of BS, it can create a feeling of dissatisfaction and of not being enough and not being valuable, not being good enough, and questioning your own self, and then also comparing and contrasting. And we see this even more with social media, the rise of social media and Instagram influencers and Facebook and all these platforms where we can spend our hours of each day, instead of being productive and working on our own self and advancing our own goals and causes, or even using that tool as a way to be inspired by other people. Many folks use it as a way to say, well, I don't look like her, I don't look like him, he has more than I do, he looks better than I do. Why do they have so many followers? Why are they getting so many likes and comments when I'm over here pouring my heart out and nobody gives a damn? There's a lot of that envy and the judgment, and that can lead to other unhealthy feelings. And as I know full well, and I'm sure some of you guys do as well, when you have those feelings, if you don't have a healthy outlet for that, say a piece of art to channel your energy into, or a conversation, somebody to have a good, healthy, open conversation with, you can start to seek to relieve that feeling with drugs, with alcohol, or with further, okay, well, I just need to get all these right clothes and this right makeup and this right vehicle and this right hairstyle and talk about the right things on social media and portray myself in this way, and then I'll be just like everybody else. And then once I get there, I will finally fit in. I will finally belong. And ultimately, that doesn't happen. You end up just struggling more and more to compare yourself to everybody else, and you lose sight of who you are as an individual. And I'm speaking from experience here. If you resonate with this, cool. If not, then be thankful this is not something you've had to deal with. But this comes from, again, that original feeling of wanting to fit in and wanting to belong, whether you're talking about wanting to fit in and belong with your immediate family, your peer group, or the world at large, society at large. And I think that this desire to fit in, it is programmed into us, maybe on the genetic biological level, but also programmed within via the culture. There's a lot of, especially growing up as a kid, there's a lot of societal peer pressure to belong and to be the cool kids or to fit into a certain group. And some of us automatically know growing up, like, we don't give a shit, we don't care, that's BS, right? But ultimately, we all still want to belong, even if it's just to your subset of friends or your subgenre of whatever you're trying to appeal to and to be a part of. Even, for me, I grew up as a punk and as a gothic kid, and I rejected everything else. Like, oh, I don't like those preppy kids. Even though in my mind I didn't know who they were, in my mind they represented the antithesis of what I wanted to be about. Oh, they look so clean cut and they fit in and they're just so happy and smiling, and I was miserable. And so I wanted to be around other people who were into this extreme music and wanted to rage and party and just cause destruction and whatever it was that I was feeling. And so I found other kids who were feeling very similar, and we connected in that way. We connected through music. We connected through creating our own culture. And that was a valuable experience. And that wasn't necessarily the healthiest way, but I did find the peer group that I wanted to belong to, ultimately, at least for a little while, until I realized that, well, they didn't really care about me either, that this wasn't really what I was looking for. But all of my life, and I think all of our lives, many of us are looking to belong and to fit in some way. Now, I know some of you will say, well, hey, I never want to fit in. Fitting in is for suckers. But I think at the heart of it, we all do want to belong in some sense. We belong in different ways. You can just belong and fit in with your small group of people. Social media has given this idea that we have 5,000 friends or followers or whatever. But at the end of the day, think about the people you can count on. I get a lot of emails of support, people saying they want to help me in different ways, financially, emotionally, like email me, hit me up if you ever have a problem or an issue. And I support that. I value that, and I'm thankful for that. But I really, truly can only count maybe 2 people that I feel comfortable opening up to and having dialogue. And maybe you feel the same way. So despite our larger circles that the internet has allowed us to have and to connect to people, we're still out there in our small little circles trying to belong. And again, when I've connected with people by speaking and traveling, I realize that there are so many people who feel like they are the black sheep of their family, right? They don't belong. Whether that means because of their diet, because of their attitudes towards government, or because of their belief in conspiracies or alternative research, or simply just because they're the weird one in the family that wants to express themselves differently with different clothes or, hair colors or piercings or tattoos or whatever it may be, right? Just for whatever reason, we are the black sheep of our family. And prior to the internet, most of us felt like we were alone. Prior to the internet, you might find like a bulletin board or a flyer, or early internet, like a message board to chat on. And you're like, wow, there's some other people who are into this, whatever I'm into. And now I have another group of friends. They're not in the real world, but I can connect to them digitally. And as the internet has grown, as social media has grown, we all started to connect and realize, okay, I'm not alone in the world. I'm not the only black sheep in my family. I'm not the only person that has this interest in X, Y, and Z. So we start to form our own pages and our own groups and our own conferences and our own festivals, and we connect to each other real world and face to face, and we realize, whoa, there's so many of us spread out all around the world: India, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, the UK, South America. We're all over the world, and we're all interested in alternative health and alternative information and living differently than what our families have shown us. And so we've found each other and we've connected to each other. We realize that, well, there is a way to fit in. Maybe not with our families necessarily, or maybe not even with the world at large, but we can fit into our particular group. And I guess the whole reason I wanted to share this idea is just because I wonder, now that we are finding ways to fit in, to connect to each other, what do we do with that? What do we do with the momentum, the realization, the understanding that there are other people like us? And maybe we don't all have the same food taste or musical interests or movie interests or book interests, or we don't like to spend our free time in the same ways, but we unite together over the search for truth and justice and freedom and trying to understand that. And even within those circles, you guys know full well there's lots of division, and these circles of libertarian, anarchism, activists, conspiracy researchers, and truthers, there's a lot of division even within that circle. But for the most part, people come here to unite and to connect and to finally fit in with their particular group. But what do we do with that? What are we doing with that? Now that we're finding a way to fit in and connect and plug into each other, what are we going to do with it? I don't know. It's up to you guys. I have ideas. I've shared them for going on 9 years now, and I will continue to share them for another 9 or 10 years, I hope, as I move towards the solutions that I want to live. And honestly, I'm kind of done worried about fitting in. I've realized that the larger society doesn't seem to have a place for me, that the way that I want to live, the principles I want to live by are completely, the opposite of what the society at large is telling me. The people that they tell me I should worship and celebrate and that should be my heroes, and the values that they want to promote and believe in do not coincide with what I see as valuable and healthy. So I'm making my move to exit, to opt out of the society at large, not to leave it behind, not to drift away or to give up or anything like that, but to build the future that I want, so I can build a place where I fit in, where my loved ones fit in, and maybe where some of you fit in, or at least where we can connect and share and grow together. Because I think the reality is, the reason some of us grow up not feeling like we fit in with society at large is because we were never meant to. We were meant to conform, to bow down, to obey, and to submit. And some people are content with that. Some people are happy with that, maybe because they don't even realize they are submitting, because it's such a blind, obedient action on their part. But for those of us who don't fit in, those of us who won't bow, who won't kneel, who won't submit, there is a place for us, and it's something we're going to have to create. So I hope you guys think about this. I think about where you belong, where you fit in, and until next time, guys, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.